All right, so get this. Today's deep dive, we're going into the world of addiction and homelessness.
Okay.
But with a twist.
Okay.
We're really dissecting the memoir of Jared.
Right.
This guy went from, like, being homeless and addicted to a successful author.
Wow.
Talk about a story, right?
Yeah, it's a journey. I think, we often misunderstand.
Totally.
So I'm really interested to kind of see what we can learn from his experiences, especially through the lens of his book and this interview he did on Matt and Shane's Secret podcast.
And that's our source material for today.
Okay.
Jared's, raw and often hilarious conversation on Matt and Shane's Secret podcast about his book, Smile If You Can't Afford It.
Right.
And did you know...
I'm excited to dive in.
Did you know his dad was so paranoid when Jared was growing up, he would make these rambling confessions to a camcorder.
Really?
Like, imagine being a kid and your dad's, like, confessing his sins to a camcorder.
I can only imagine what those tapes must sound like.
Oh, my God.
It sounds like humor was a coping mechanism for him.
Absolutely. But let's rewind a bit.
Okay.
Jared's story really highlights how addiction can really sneak up on you.
Right.
He talks about this line in the sand mentality he had.
Okay.
Like, he was okay delivering heroin,
wow,
but swore he would never touch meth.
It's incredible how the human mind can justify things.
Oh, yeah.
Especially when it comes to addiction.
Really?
It's like there's this internal tug of war going on.
Yeah, and for Jared, that line in the sand got washed away pretty quickly. He talks about how his dealer basically made meth seem like a job requirement.
Wow.
Like, gotta stay sharp for driving and all that.
Yeah.
All that stuff.
It's a classic example of how addiction distorts logic and manipulates people into believing they're in control when they're actually, like, losing their grip.
Totally.
And methamphetamine in particular is known for its rapid and devastating effects.
It's scary how fast things went downhill for him.
Yeah.
1 minute he's a college student with a girlfriend.
Wow.
The next, he is homeless, paranoid, and missing a toe in a Chinatown bathtub.
Oh, my God.
And he even says there was a moment where he was shooting up heroin, thinking, well, this is where my choices got me.
It's often in those moments of utter despair that people can find a strange sort of clarity.
Sadly, hitting rock bottom doesn't magically fix everything.
Right.
Jared talks about how, even after getting clean, he would constantly hear this voice in his head saying, you're going to go back. It's just a matter of time.
That internal struggle, that's addiction for you.
Yeah.
It's not simply a choice or a weakness. It's a chronic, relapsing disease that needs constant management and support.
Which makes you wonder, are we even tackling this the right way? I mean, throwing people in jail doesn't seem to be the answer.
It's a complex issue.
Yeah.
It's interesting to hear that Jared actually credits time in jail for saving his life.
Really?
But his reasoning wasn't what you'd expect.
Okay.
It wasn't about rehabilitation programs or anything like that.
Right. It was more about being completely cut off from drugs.
Yeah.
And having this harsh reality check.
Right.
He saw the guys who had been in and out of the system for years, and it scared him straight.
So it was more of a deterrent than a solution.
Totally.
A wake-up call.
Exactly. And once he was released, he was determined not to become another statistic.
Right.
He ended up back on Skid Row for a bit.
Okay.
And he talks about how young everyone there was.
Oh, really?
These weren't hardened criminals. They were just kids who had lost their way.
It's a heartbreaking reminder that homelessness doesn't discriminate. It's a complex issue, influenced by poverty, mental health, lack of support, and, of course, addiction.
And get this, he actually made more money shoplifting on Skid Row than he does now with a regular job.
Wow.
He had a whole system down, a partner to cause a distraction, a fence for specific beauty products.
It's a testament to the desperation that addiction brings. It can make people compromise their morals just to survive.
He was pulling in like a couple grand a week, easy.
Wow.
But of course, it all went straight back into feeding the addiction.
Exactly. And that's a crucial point for our listener.
Right.
Addiction isn't about the money, the thrill, or even the substance itself.
Yeah.
It's about filling a void, numbing pain, escaping reality.
Totally.
Which leads us to his time on Skid Row.
Oh, yeah.
You wouldn't believe the things he saw and experienced there.
Oh, I bet.
Give me an example. What kind of realities are we talking about?
So he talks about this like escalation ladder when it comes to what you're willing to do.
Okay.
Starts with jaywalking.
Uh-huh.
Then like snowballs into littering.
Right.
Then yelling at people at McDonald's.
Oh, wow.
He said before he knew it, he was actually contemplating robbery.
It's like this downward spiral fueled by a feeling of being detached from society.
Yeah.
And ultimately, a loss of hope.
Right.
When you don't believe in a better future, all that matters is the present moment.
Right.
No matter how chaotic or destructive it gets.
It's like your sense of what's normal just disappears.
Totally.
And get this, he actually said being a white guy on Skid Row was a disadvantage.
That's unexpected.
He said he stuck out like a sore thumb.
Really?
You know, like some clean-cut suburban kid who took a wrong turn.
Oh, wow.
Apparently, people were almost afraid of him.
So, in a way, his appearance provided some protection.
In a sense, yeah.
Okay.
It made people wary of messing with him.
Okay.
But it also made him a target for exploitation. People assumed he had money or connections, so he was constantly running errands and doing favors for others.
It just goes to show you, even in a marginalized community like Skid Row,
Right.
those power dynamics based on things like appearance and social capital still exist.
Absolutely. And it reminds us that these are real people.
Right.
With their own unique stories, not just statistics.
Yeah.
It's easy to forget that when we talk about homelessness in these, broad strokes.
Totally.
Speaking of unexpected social dynamics,
Yeah.
did you know being a white guy in jail could be just as much of a social liability as being black in America?
Okay, that's a comparison I wasn't expecting.
Right.
Tell me more.
Jared talks about this whole weird etiquette
Okay.
around race and masculinity in jail.
Mm-hmm.
Apparently, the Mexican gangs held a lot of power. And the white guys had to be really careful not to do anything that could be perceived as gay.
Interesting.
Like they were constantly trying to prove their masculinity.
That's fascinating.
Isn't that wild?
It's like these social hierarchies and cultural norms persist even in an environment designed to strip individuals of their identities.
Exactly. He said they couldn't even joke about being gay in front of the Mexican gang members.
Wow.
It's like this bizarre, inverted reflection of the outside world.
It makes you realize how strong the human need for belonging and social order really is.
It's true.
Even in the most unexpected places.
And you wouldn't believe the awkward situations it led to.
Oh, I bet.
He talks about how all these white dudes felt pressured to work out constantly
Really?
in front of the Mexican gang members just to prove they were tough.
It's a somewhat tragic comic example of how easily people conform to social pressure, even if it means suppressing who they are.
For sure. And don't even get me started on what he called the unspoken etiquette of masturbation in a crowded jail door.
Okay. I think we can move on from that visual.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
But on a more serious note, Jared also talks about how rehabilitation programs often miss the mark in that environment.
Yeah.
Things like AA meetings and meditation classes were actually seen as gay by the other inmates.
Oh, wow.
They would purposely try to disrupt them.
It really underscores how challenging it is to provide effective support in a setting where there's often resistance to change.
It's tough.
And a deep distrust of authority.
And it's even tougher when they just release these guys back onto the streets with no money, no support.
It's like setting them up to fail.
Don't-
As Jared points out, it's not enough to simply provide housing or job training.
Right.
You have to address the root causes, the trauma, the lack of purpose,
Right.
and the belief that a better life just isn't possible.
And that's where Jared's story takes a really interesting turn.
Okay.
He finds faith and purpose, but not in the way you might expect.
Okay. I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
So he finds this sense of purpose through hard work, like manual labor, construction, framing houses.
Okay.
He actually says, work will set you free,
Wow.
which I thought was interesting considering the historical baggage of that phrase.
It is a loaded phrase.
Yeah.
But I can see how, for someone in his position,
Totally.
finding fulfillment in honest work could be incredibly powerful.
Totally. And for Jared, it wasn't just about the paycheck.
Right.
It was about building something real.
Yeah.
Contributing to something bigger than himself.
And probably finding a sense of community and belonging that had been missing in his life.
100%. He talks about how for the first time he felt like he was part of a team, working towards a common goal.
Right.
Which brings us to his critique of how we currently address homelessness and addiction.
I'm curious to hear this. What's his take?
So he's actually pretty critical of nonprofits.
Really?
He says there's this weird incentive to keep people stuck in the system
Interesting.
instead of actually helping them become self-sufficient.
That's a serious accusation, but I can see how in some cases,
Right.
the bureaucratic nature of nonprofits might get in the way of truly serving those in need.
Exactly. He says it's like that whole Give a man a fish. Saying,
Right.
we need to stop just handing out food and blankets and start giving people the tools and support to build a life,
Yeah.
a real life, not just a, slightly less bleak existence.
Right, like you're saying.
He's talking about teaching a man to fish.
He's advocating for a more holistic approach.
Yes.
One that empowers individuals to become active participants in their own recovery.
And he believes that fostering a sense of purpose is a huge part of that.
Of course.
For him, that purpose came from hard work and finding faith. But he acknowledges that it's not a one-size-fits-all solution.
Everyone's journey is unique.
Right, and that's where he sees a lot of programs failing.
Okay.
They try to apply these blanket solutions
Yeah.
instead of really listening to individual needs and tailoring the support accordingly.
It's about recognizing the humanity of each person, their unique experiences, their strengths, and their struggles.
Absolutely, and we can't forget that addiction is tough.
It is.
Jared's story shows that recovery is possible, but it's a constant battle.
It's a lifelong journey that requires immense courage, resilience, and support.
We got that right.
Yeah.
What really struck me was Jared's honesty throughout this whole interview.
Yeah.
He doesn't sugarcoat the realities of addiction
No.
or the struggles of getting back on your feet.
It's refreshing, actually.
It is. That's really refreshing.
What?
But here's the thing. Even when he's describing the most heartbreaking, difficult situations, he finds a way to make you laugh.
That's great.
His humor, even in the darkest moments, is a testament to the resilience of the human spirit.
Absolutely. Our capacity to find joy and connection, even in the most challenging circumstances, is truly remarkable.
It really is.
Yeah.
So we've talked about Jared's journey from addiction to recovery,
Right.
the harsh realities he faced on Skid Row and in jail,
Right.
his unexpected path to finding faith and purpose in manual labor,
Right.
and his critique of current approaches to homelessness.
Right.
But there's one question that kind of lingers for me, and it's something I kind of want to leave you with today.
Okay.
Jared credits his own recovery, in part, to finding faith and purpose in a very specific way.
Right.
Could this be a model that we could replicate? Could we create programs that connect people in recovery with meaningful work opportunities?
Interesting.
Or is that just too simplistic of an approach for something as complex as addiction and homelessness?